Steelspire rose from the plains like a blade driven into the earth. Its jagged towers were cast of blackened steel and cracked stone, thrusting skyward as if daring the heavens themselves to strike them down. Smoke poured from hundreds of chimneys and forges, blurring the sunrise into a rust-colored haze. The clang of hammers never ceased. Even at dawn the city pulsed like the heart of a furnace, a place where iron was shaped into weapons and the strong bent the world to their will. Cale reached its outskirts at first light. His cloak was heavy with ash from the highlands, his boots leaving faint trails on cracked stone roads. His HUD flickered the moment he crossed the boundary marker zone. Discovery, Steelspire, the Forge Master's bastion. Warning, Apex anomaly detected within range. Security on alert. The soul blade whispered in his palm, ember veins glowing faintly. They already know. Cale drew his hood lower and stepped into the press of the outer wards. Crowds of players streamed through the streets, their armor clinking, their voices rising above the market stalls. NPC vendors barked scripted calls, hawking blades fresh from the forge. Guild recruiters waved banners, promising power and glory. Cale slipped between them unnoticed for the moment. He was just another hooded traveler in a city built to feed on ambition. Yet every guard construct that turned its faceless helm toward him lingered a fraction too long before moving again. He felt the eyes of the system on him with every step. The Grand Market was a sprawling square, lined with anvils and molten braziers, stalls of ash crystals and steel scraps. The smell of oil and smoke soaked everything. Cale moved carefully among the crowd, listening. The rumors were already spreading faster than fire. They say the Shadow Forger killed a Prime. Impossible. The Purge Primes cannot be beaten. Then how do you explain Steelspire's horns? Accord's retreat was confirmed. Dominion scattered. The bounty is 50,000 now. Enough to buy a guild hall and gear a raid. If the system cannot kill him, the world will. Cale kept his eyes down but his jaw tightened. His name had become a currency stronger than gold. At one forge he paused, watching the smith work the glowing metal on the anvil. The man was not a player but an NPC with ember scars etched deep across his arms. When the smith looked up his eyes widened slightly. For a moment Cale thought he had been recognized. Then the smith inclined his head and spoke softly, his voice rough with ash. Legacy bearer. Cale froze. His hand tightened on the soul blade. You can see it? The smith's eyes flicked to the weapon, veins glowing faintly in its blade. Steel remembers what the system tries to forget. You carry an echo of the first forges. Dangerous, yes. But not without purpose. Cale leaned closer. What do you know of it? The smith opened his mouth, but the answer never came. A horn split the air, shrill and commanding. Panic rippled through the market. Players scattered. NPCs retreated behind shutters. Guard constructs locked into defensive positions, forming walls of steel. Cale turned slowly toward the sound. Accord banners swept into view, radiant silver and blue gleaming in the morning haze. Knights marched in formation, their armor polished, shields raised. At their front strode Captain Helion himself, the commander Cale had clashed with in the highlands. His glaive rested across his shoulder, gleaming with radiant fire. His gaze swept across the market until it locked on Cale. There, Helion barked. His voice carried like a hammer strike on steel. By order of Accord, seize the anomaly. The square emptied in seconds. If this story has you listening this far, subscribe to Azure Inkblade so the next chapter finds you instead of getting buried. It helps us keep making more of these every week. Now, back to the chapter. Only soldiers and constructs remained. Cale drew the soul blade slowly, ember veins igniting as he raised it. The whispers stirred with hunger. Break them here. Show them what unbound means. Cale's voice cut low but steady. If you want me, then come and take me. Helion leveled his glaive, its radiant core blazing. Gladly. The knights surged forward. The first line advanced in perfect formation, shields interlocked, spears leveled. Kale planted his boot on a hidden seam running beneath the cobbles and dropped an umbral anchor into it. As the wall of steel closed, he vanished into shadow, snapping to the anchor. He reappeared behind them and drew the soul blade in a sweeping shadow flare arc. The blast carved through shields and armor, shattering radiant wards like brittle glass. Knights screamed and dissolved into fragments. The survivors staggered. Helion spun and charged, his glaive sweeping in a radiant arc. Kale caught it on the flat of his blade. Ember shadow collided with blinding white. Sparks exploded across the square as cobbles cracked beneath their feet. You should be Ash, Helion snarled, pressing forward. The purge should have ended you. Kale bared his teeth, eyes burning ember black. Then maybe it is broken. He twisted inside Helion's guard and slammed the pommel of the soul blade into his chest. The captain staggered back, armor sparking. The line faltered. Kale let the anchor pull him again, snapping across the square as a spear cut the air where he had stood. He landed lightly, cloak flaring, and laughed once, breathless. The whispers purred. Edges cut twice. A cord's formation began to bend. Kale moved like smoke along the fault lines, cutting wherever discipline wavered. Each shadow flare widened the cracks. Each strike devoured light. Helion rallied his soldiers with furious commands. Radiant glyphs flared across the square, arcs of light locking into a containment field around Kale. But the glyphs bent like water against oil. The soul blade pulsed and the field shivered apart, unable to categorize him. Helion's voice thundered. You should not exist. You are a mistake. Kale's answer was a thin smile. Then call me the system's nightmare. He surged forward. The glaive and the soul blade met again, black fire and white brilliance tearing the market apart. Stalls splintered. Braziers toppled, spilling molten coals across stone. Guard constructs tried to intervene but their scripts glitched. One froze mid-step, another locked into a half-pose, a third flickered as if reality itself had forgotten its place. The battle raged through the square. A cord pressed with shields and radiant chants. Kale answered with shadow anchors and arcs of eclipse fire. The clash of ideals rang louder than the clash of steel. One side sought order, the other storm. Kale's stamina bled down to warning levels. His health bar hovered at yellow. Helion's glaive cut a line across his shoulder, hot light searing flesh. Kale snarled and drove the soul blade in return, its arc carving a molten crescent across Helion's shield. The captain staggered again, breath ragged. Yet he refused to fall. Kale tightened his grip. The whispers surged with approval. No longer hunted. Now the hunter. The battle had become more than survival. Steelspire was no sanctuary. It was a crucible, and Kale's legacy would either shatter here or burn brighter than ever. As the sun broke fully over the horizon, its light drowned by smoke and shadow, Kale stood in the heart of the square. A cord closed from every side. Helion roared and raised his glaive for another strike. Kale lifted the soul blade, ember veins blazing, and stepped into the storm.